Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be joined today by representatives from Everton Football Club, or at least people who are attached to the planning application went in for the stadium development, which of course was approved a week or so ago now. But before we get into that discussion, can I just ask our sponsor, the Liverpool Property Club from Project 4, Alan Robson, to say a few words about the club and perhaps, Alan, your delight being a Red at the news that that Everton have got that planning permission through.
Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, hi guys. Thanks to all the speakers today. And yeah, I think colours aside, it's hard not to get excited about this project for the impact it's going to have. You know, not just the stadium itself, but I think the wider economy, the spin-off projects, the catalyst it will be for Liverpool Waters and the hotels, the bars, the resi that will come with it. So having been part of and playing part in other large projects across the UK, we can see the impact it's going to have, not just for the local economy, but wider Northwest region. So huge news, positive news, and I think it's come at the right time. So I've got a couple of questions for later, because I should imagine you've had quite a lot of challenges to get to this stage, with more challenges ahead. So I think you'll certainly get lots of sympathy and support on this call, because it's construction focused. So Liverpool Property Club, we set up a few years back, and we brought it back to life, or we tried before COVID come along. So yeah, thanks for speaking today, guys. And just to tie in, my co-director Max is on the call, I think and hope. So we have won a project recently with Lango Rourke, just down in London, but also working with them over in Manchester as well. So we are working quite closely with the team. So best of luck, and thanks for joining us today. I'm sure you've had a hectic few weeks after the announcement. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you.
Right. Thanks, Alan, and thanks to Project 4, as always, for their support with the Liverpool Property Club events. So yeah, it was quite a monumental week for Everton Football Club. Great victory at Anfield, of course, followed by an extension to the contract of the best left-back in the Premier League, Luca Dean, and then, of course, a unanimous support of the Liverpool Planning Committee for the stadium development. Before we get into next stages, because as Alan's indicated there, we still have one or two hurdles to clear, I think it'd be useful for us to remind ourselves of the journey, because we can quickly forget, particularly given the fact that the last 10 months we've been in lockdown, that, you know, this has been a long process, at times quite an arduous one. And Richard, you've been involved from the outset. So just remind people of the steps the club have had to take to get to the stage where you won. I think you can be greatly complimented for the fact unanimous support from the City Council's Planning Committee.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Take it you can hear me okay?
Yeah, good.
Thanks, Frank, and thanks, Alan, for having us and for inviting us here today. And thank you for your support as well as a Red. Frank didn't. If you didn't know already, then people will certainly know now what colour Frank is after that introduction. It has been a really good couple of weeks for the club. Someone said to me the other day, you know, it's a great time to be an Evertonian, and my response to that was, it's always a great time to be an Evertonian, but particularly in this last few weeks, there's been some really good things happening around the club, and you've obviously mentioned a few of them there, Frank. But as you say, in terms of the planning approval at local level, it was absolutely brilliant to get that. And as you say, it's a result of a lot of hard work from a lot of people over many years, and engagement across different stakeholder groups. So going back probably 3 years or so now, maybe more, we started to talk with our supporters around a stadium move and looking at what they would want from a new stadium. We devised a number of principles with the supporters around what were the most important things, and they formed a document, or 11 key principles as it was at the time, and that included things that were obviously related to the match day itself, but also related to other things more broadly, including making the biggest impact that we could in the city region. So that was a few years ago, and we then tested those in a very sort of analytical way with the fan base, and we're very clear then, after getting them validated, that we had our approach for the stadium development defined. And then we went. We always had engagement with the supporters, but we started engaging more widely with different groups around the city, including Frank and yourselves and the business community. Again, very early on, just making sure that people understood what we were trying to do, and also the benefits, not just to the football club, but to the wider city and the city region. And we've always had tremendous support from the business community, from the council, from lots of different stakeholder groups, and from our own supporters. But really, what we needed to do was turn that into more formal consultation, and we started that a couple of years ago. We did a two-stage public consultation ourselves. Obviously, the city council then did their own consultation later on, but we were absolutely thrilled with the level of response to that. I mean, over the two stages, there were 63,000 respondents, which is one of the largest commercial public consultations I think the city's ever seen. So, huge in terms of the scale. And we did go to every effort we possibly could to reach out into different communities, to speak to different people, whether they're Everton fans or not, whether they're Liverpool fans or not even interested in football, just to get their views on what is a very important project, potentially for the entire city region. So delighted to get the scale of feedback and opinion, but also really, really delighted with the outcomes. We asked questions around, the principle of us moving, us staying in North Liverpool. We talked to people about the heritage of the site. We talked to them about, so many different things, and across everything we got huge support. I think across nearly all of the questions, it was more than 90% level of support, and so fantastic to get that. And again, not just supporters of Everton Football Club. I think overall, more than 10% of those respondents were Liverpool fans. So, really good representation, incredible support, and I think, we're very pleased with where that all got to, and very sort of proud of our own supporters and the people of the city region for taking such a meaningful part in it throughout. So I'm sure that all has helped us on this journey. It's been a very quite an intense journey, really, because there's been so much that we've had to go through and wanted to go through to get that understanding of what the public felt. But I think we've done that thoroughly and done that well, and I think that, as you say, that's really helped us in the meeting that we had, in the meetings that we've had over the important meetings that we've had over the last couple of weeks in particular. So yeah, very, very involved process, but something that I think has really, really gone well.
Thanks, Rich. Rich, just whilst you're talking, you're fading in and out of the conversation, so I'm not sure if you can have a tweak with your mic whilst I bring Iain into the conversation at this stage. And it's easy to forget, Iain, that at the outset, there wasn't necessarily unanimous support at the city council level, and there was some scepticism amongst some members. And of course, we've then had the challenges of the heritage lobby to overcome as well. So it must have been particularly pleasing for you to see that unanimity, the fact that, the long process that Richard's just outlined there has paid dividends in the end, because you've really been able to evidence that the club have taken this whole process really seriously and have done its absolute utmost to meet any of the concerns that have been raised.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Hi, everybody. I think Richard's outlined the process almost to a T. And you're right, over 4 years ago, sat in a small room at Goodison when we're conceiving the strategy for this, for the People's Project. It was important that we got right from the outset what this was going to be about. And it was almost the values of the project itself, not the fact that this was just a football stadium. And so the 11, we called them in the end, the 11 starting, the key principles came out of the kind of discussion about what Everton Football Club was really about. And this wasn't just about a football stadium next to a food store. This wasn't just a commercial deal. This wasn't just a fans thing. If we were going to do this right, given the kind of sites that we were talking about, this had to be this had to do more than that. This had to be a stadium for the city of Liverpool. It had to be a civic building for the city of Liverpool. It had to be a civic space for the city of Liverpool. It had to be more than bricks and mortar. It had to have a long-lasting legacy, which is why very early on, and you'll be aware in those 11 principles, we have the stadium, but we also have the legacy project. And to get 100% unanimous support to what the outline proposals for Goodison Park in particular, that is as pleasing as the results on Bramley Moor. And all the way through the 4 years, we've consulted on the principles. We've got buy-in to those sets of principles, and that, in a sense, before even anything was put on a page in terms of stadium design, in terms of how it may look and feel, we were consulting, weren't we, Rich, for probably a good 12 months on, is this the right brief for the People's Project? And that, as we got more and more buy-in to that as an approach, we felt the momentum in the project start to build right from the outset. And of course, Frank, you were part of that in the early days, as were many on this call, as we spoke, as Rich has mentioned. So from there to kind of where we are now, and it'd be glib to say that we were expecting a yes from planning committee, but the three of us in particular were so close to this, as well as the team behind us. There's a big team. This is a big team effort to get the strength of support last week, not only in the numbers, but in particular what they were saying.
Yeah.
Even took those who were very close to it. It was quite an emotional moment in the end, not to big it up too much. If you like football, you don't like football, so you're ready, you're blue. It was actually, this is the city's project. It genuinely felt like this is the city of Liverpool's project. So that's quite a journey. Council
members and officers alike were very complimentary about the professional way in which Everton had not just gone through the process, but then presented its case to planning committee. And of course, the planning committee had a bigger audience than many Premier League matches have had this season because of the nature of the COVID crisis. But I understand it was the most watched planning committee, certainly in Liverpool, if not the country, such as the interest that's been generated in the project. And Iain, you just touched upon it there, and Richard mentioned it as well, and Alan, in fact. This is so much more than a football stadium because it will act as a catalyst for regeneration of a part of Liverpool, North Liverpool, that is being one of the most deprived areas, not just in Liverpool, but actually in the country. So it's, we are really expecting big things to come from this, aren't we?
Oh, big time. If this was a single construction project, Alan will know this better than anyone. You're talking about only the House of Commons Northern Estate refurbishment project is bigger in terms of pounds, shillings and pence over the last 5 years. As a civic and commercial project in the UK, there's only one project larger than this in the last 5 years. You're talking about one of the largest projects, full stop. It's going to be much larger than the Manchester Town Hall refurbishment project. So it's already of UK significance as a construction project. So it's going to get the attention. But this is also, and Colin said this at the planning committee last week, when you take Bramley Moor and you take Legacy, the Legacy project, it's £750 million investment into North Liverpool, which is unprecedented, and it's investment by a private entity. The House of Commons refurb programme, Manchester Town Hall, that's a public project. This is a public good project delivered essentially by the private sector and by the fans of Everton Football Club. So there's huge, hugely important sort of facets to this that go deep. It's not just a stadium. And then when Legacy is delivered, this is going to keep on delivering for North Liverpool for years years in the future. The kind of projects and programs that Rich and colleagues run at Everton in the community, the Goodison project will allow that to kind of to carry on and then some. And this is the kind of social welfare, health issues that otherwise would be delivered or would have to be responded to by the public sector, the City Council, NHS, whoever. This is a project with many, many, many layers.
Now, I mentioned earlier, perhaps Colin could come into the conversation at this point. Some concerns from heritage that the club have had to overcome. And again, for those not aware of the detail of the application and the plans, a lot of investment that the club has committed to protecting that heritage moving forward, actually restoring the heritage on that site. But equally, Colin, the heritage of the club, because as much as Evertonians were celebrating last week, I saw more than one comment about the wrench that it is going to take to leave Goodison Park. That last game at Goodison is going to be heartbreaking for many of us. And so the club, again, have been very minded to take the supporters, its customers' views on board in terms of what the new stadium looks like. So talk me through those issues of heritage, as I say, not just in terms of the challenges that were set by English heritage and others, but also in terms of the customer base and what they're expecting this development to look like.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Frank. Good afternoon, Alan. I think it's probably fair to say that the guys have already touched on how complex this planning application has been, and it isn't just about achieving a planning approval. We have taken into consideration everybody's views. We're really cognizant of all of the stakeholders and I suppose their remit in regards to protecting heritage assets. But even before we got into any debate with regards to those bodies, we always knew that the site was really sensitive. We always knew that Goodison Park, leaving there, would be really sensitive. And we've engaged with all of those statutory bodies to ensure that we sort of respected and incorporated any of those heritage concerns within the real design of the stadium, and also any heritage concerns that they had with regards to how we would treat Goodison Park there afterwards. And without putting too much of a pounds and pennies price on it, we've probably included around about £50 million worth of additional work streams and value within the stadium development, purely just to protect those heritage assets. What we really wanted to do as well is ensure that those heritage assets that are currently not available to anybody to see, that they're behind a 5 metre high wall, we really wanted to make sure that they were included within the design, and actually not just repurpose them, but put them to good use if we could, which is quite difficult when you turn in a maritime environment into, I suppose, a football environment. But the guys in the design teams, the guys in the heritage bodies, every stakeholder that we've worked with has understood what can and can't be done. And we think that the design that we have is really sympathetic to bringing those heritage assets back to life and give them, a purpose for the next 200 years, hopefully.
I'll express some personal frustration at this point. It won't come as a surprise to most people on the call. I've been very critical of the way in which the Heritage Lobby have been able to dictate planning and regeneration policy in Liverpool for many years now. I think that it's got far too much influence in terms of where we've gone as a city, and it's held us back at times. And the other side of that coin has always been, well, we've got to make sure that we protect our heritage, and therefore it's important that they do have a loud voice. I'm not sure whether you're aware, Colin, of any project, any scheme that has been as painstakingly detailed in its analysis of the heritage, and then, as you say, coming up with a financial investment to protect that heritage. And, my big frustration, and the reason I will continue to say to Liverpool City Council, give the badge back, give World Heritage status back to UNESCO, is that they still ultimately weren't satisfied, as I understand it.
I think, as a club, we would like one, to develop our new stadium on that waterfront, but we'd also like Liverpool to retain that heritage, World Heritage status. Regardless of that, though, we're still building within a conservation area. We've been completely aware of the sensitivities, and regardless of whether it was a World Heritage site or whether conservation area, whether we had no bodies lobbying us, we would have still carried out the detailed work that we've included within that planning application, and that has always been part of the club's brief from day one, is respect the heritage. We're also conscious that Liverpool City Council want to have a world-class waterfront. They would like to have I suppose a footpath that leads from the southern docks all the way up to the northern docks. We've said we would like the new stadium to be the start and end point of that river walk, and we've taken on board, I wouldn't say criticism, I think it would be more constructive criticism with regards to the original designs that we proposed. We've done away with the car park that everybody thought was actually unsuitable on that site. We've developed a west stand terrace that looks over the River Mersey across to the Wirral, and we see that being a civic space that can be the start and stop end point of that river walk.
Yeah, it is going to be a spectacular development. Richard, you just wanted to come in then, and I've got a question about sort of next stages for you as well.
Sure, yeah, I was just going to come back in on your point around Goodison, Frank, and I know as an Evertonian myself what that stadium means to us, and has meant not just to Everton actually, but to the game over the decades of its existence. But the time, I think everyone appreciates that it isn't a suitable stadium for us moving forward, and I think that's obviously been accepted now. And when we went through the consultation, one of the questions that we asked was about our plans for Goodison and what we're going to do there. And again, we got huge support for that, because we want this still to be part of the club, even though we're not playing football there anymore. So you'll know, Frank, because you've been to it many times, but we've been developing a campus around the stadium over the last few years. We've had it's more than £10 million worth of investment, physical regeneration investment into some of the buildings to house our community facilities. And I think people have really welcomed that they will still be able to go back to the site of Goodison, and there to be part of the club still there, and part of the club, the sort of ethos of the club, the essence of the club, that is doing something to support that community, even though we've left. So the legacy, I think, is starting to come more into focus now, obviously after that decision last week. I think it's becoming more into focus, and I think people will become more and more interested in it as well, because that is a scheme that's innovative. It's not been done on the side of a football stadium to the lengths that we're going to before. And I think, Evertonians are behind that, and as are people in the community as well, which is very, very important. And I think as those plans get as more detail of those plans come through and people start to see the benefits that Everton will help bring to that community, I think people will become very excited about that, as well as the stadium on the waterfront will be exciting. I think people will become excited about what we're going to do at Goodison and in and around Goodison as well. So I think it will be, when the day comes for us to stop playing there, I think it will be an emotional day. But I think in the years to come, hopefully, people will be able to go back and see that the club have left a very, very fitting legacy and actually created helped create a thriving community on that site. So, as I say, I think that will be an increasingly exciting part of the overall project.
The Legacy project is a really exciting initiative, and again, I think credit to the club. Nobody was surprised that the club wanted to take care of that site and of that community. There was never a question of Goodison just being levelled off and seeing a big supermarket or hypermarket on that site. There was always the intention of the club, and obviously backed by the supporters very much so, to see that site develop in the way that you've outlined, Richard. But if we can use the football analogy as to where the plan and application is up to at this point, it's 89th minute and we're 2-0 up. and it's on to Robert Jenrick. Now, listen, any Evertonian who tells you otherwise is telling fibs when they say that we were watching the Derby game the other week, and in the 93rd minute, we still daren't celebrate, and we were 2-0 up. I tell you, I was at the Newcastle game last season when they scored 2 in the last minute. So it's positive, and I think we're all optimistic that, you know, particularly given the economic benefits that Iain's outlined that this project brings. But let's just explain to people, we do have to overcome that final hurdle, don't we, as Robert Jenrick inspects this final application.
Yeah, is that one for me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I had, as you were talking there, I was getting flashbacks, Frank, to late equalisers against us and stuff. But we've also, you know, we've done some good stuff in the last few minutes.
We have, yeah.
I remember 2 goals in injury time against Spurs at Goodison a few years ago. So
yeah. On at United this season as well.
There you go. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Frank, and maybe Iain will pick up after me here. This is, you know, we're only still part of a way through a process here, and obviously we've been spending time over the last few years putting the best possible case forward that we can, and again, you know, very encouraging to get that level of support locally, but there is still a stage still to go through. Obviously, you know, we're hopeful that goes our way, and I think again, just to step back a little bit into some of the things that we've been reflecting on. I mean, we haven't really talked in detail about the benefits to the city. We've talked about the scheme being of benefit to the city and the city region, but when you look at the numbers, you know, it is a big scale project. And I know Iain was talking about projects of similar scale, or how there are a few projects of similar scale. But when you look at the boost to the economy that it will bring, the jobs that it will create, the social benefits as well. I mean, I have 2 roles, obviously, one at the club and one as chief executive of Everton in the community. And to know that we're going to be improving opportunities for people in that part of Liverpool, to me, is a massive, massive part of this. And through the legacy project, through the stadium itself, you know, this will be a massive, massive boost to the part of the region that really needs it. Again, we could go through the numbers, the 15,000 jobs created, the 1.3 billion boost to the overall economy, the more than 1 million additional visitors, which will greatly help the visitor economy that obviously has been massively affected recently. And again, that societal value, all of these things that, you know, the big scale numbers that will be massive for us. And they were important when we were doing the consultation, when we were first looking at these numbers. They were massively important because of, you know, the need for regeneration in this area. But after this last 12 months, you look at it and you think this is even more important than ever, that this moves ahead, because all of those things that I just talked about, you know, are even more needed coming out of this pandemic. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk about levelling up, there's been build, all of these things that we know are important on a national level, are massively important to us in this region. So yeah, there is a process to go through, but hopefully with the case that we've put forward and the environment that we're in as well now post-pandemic, you know, I think we remain hopeful that we can get through that. So I don't know if Iain wants to follow.
Yeah, the Secretary of State, his team has officially 21 days to decide whether or not to call this in. I think the reality is it's going to take longer because there's 50 odd reports across 30 different subject areas. This is tens of thousands of pages of a planning application, such is the level of detail. But we know that they've already honed into sort of the key aspects of this in terms of how critical the case is. So if it doesn't take 21 days, we will know within that 21 days exactly where they're going to be. But you do come back to the sort of the key argument is benefits outweighing the harm that's caused. And we have to say, and Colin's alluded to this, we've worked with Historic England and the City Council all the way through this, from 4 years out to where we are today. Very early on, we're all in unanimous agreement that we agree on the level of harm. The harm that's created is the infill of the dock. The infill of the dock technology is itself, by the way, it's reversible. And we've gone out of our way to make sure that the kind of any harm is managed through the construction process itself. So it comes down to that balance of harm against benefits raised and benefits generated. And Richard sort of outlined the socioeconomic benefits. I've touched on the longitudinal benefits of this is a project that's going to keep on giving and giving for generations into the future. But actually some of those other benefits that this project brings are around sustainable development. This project has been appraised against each one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's about health, it's about welfare, it's about biodiversity, net gain, it's about environmental quality and photovoltaics and charging points and batteries instead of diesel. There's a lot to commend this and appraise this project anyway that deliver further benefits. There's also the fact that, in accessibility terms, this is walking and cycling first. This is investment in public transport. Cars are actively discouraged from going anywhere near the stadium on a match day or even a non-match day basis because the club's investing in a new shuttle bus service that's going to connect Sandhills with Bramley-Moore Dock with 10 streets with the city centre. And then you get on to actually the heritage benefits. It's not just all about heritage harm, this story. It's about heritage benefits. The fact that this is a site, as Colin alluded to, which is inaccessible, locked up, might be a World Heritage site, and we've been very respectful of World Heritage, but it's locked up and it's inaccessible to the public. There's a reason why that wall is there and was put there in the first place. But actually, the baseline, the true baseline, is that nothing is going to happen to that site without this project for at least another 20 years. And if anyone in the right mind is going to say that the hydraulic tower will stay standing for 20 years, they'll need the head testing. This is a deteriorating heritage asset. It's not that before you get into the scheme, it's a deteriorating heritage asset that's doing nobody any favours. So what we're doing, and as Colin outlined, the amount of investment that the club is making into the heritage assets on site, the infill technologies, the materiality, the design, is going way above and beyond any project, which makes this a unique project. Now, again, that baseline is a residential scheme in 20 years. I can tell you, most of the people on this call will tell you, the development community will probably say that that would be an unviable development. A residential scheme on that site, given that it was a former coal wharf, everything that we found in terms of what's in the site, remediation, contamination, it will be unviable. It will be unviable in 20 years. It's next to a wastewater treatment plant that's also on an infill dock. The baseline for this site is nothing, to be honest. And for anyone to suggest otherwise is wrong. And we're happy to kind of go to town on that particular point alone. So the benefits are multifarious. The benefits are really all-encompassing, not just now, but for a long time in the future. That's our case, and that's what the Secretary of State has really got to get its head around.
It is mind-blowing if anyone's visited the site to imagine anyone could object to a stadium on heritage grounds, because, as you say, that site has been locked away for a long time and would remain locked only for Everton's interest in developing it. But Colin, let's assume and hope for the best that the Secretary of State comes back relatively quickly with the positive decision that we're all expecting and hoping. Iain's said it's going to be, the most sustainable of stadiums, which clearly is increasingly important in the current political environment. But then there's other things being mentioned today, which I know we're keen to see progress. Working alongside Laing O'Rourke, who have a good record of ensuring that you've got local supply chains in place. And we want to see job opportunities and employment opportunities for the Indigenous community where is possible, don't we? So tell us a little bit more about what the club's been doing to work on that side of things.
Yeah, certainly, Frank. We, as you say, Laing O'Rourke are a tier 1 contractor. Not only are they a tier 1 contractor, but they intend to construct this project using new technologies and new methodologies. And one of the things that we've been keen to do, working with EITC as well in particular, we built up a relationship with Laing O'Rourke. Has actually started to deliver benefits to the community already. particularly during the pandemic, they've been really helpful in, I suppose, supporting EITC with some of their programs. But having said that, we said we wanted to maintain that relationship and work very closely with the EITC, work closely with the free school, make sure that local, jobs were available to people, and where there weren't those skill sets that we currently lack in the Northwest and certainly Liverpool and the city region, give local people the opportunity to be upskilled in modern technologies, modern construction methodologies. And we see this project as being a catalyst for, the new way of working in construction moving forward. And what we have agreed with Langs is that we'll be putting some really onerous KPIs on them to, I suppose, ensure that we stand by our ethos of working with the local community. Hopefully they will learn something out of that relationship as well by, understanding what corporations should really be doing. Because one thing Everton does, it's a responsible corporation. It doesn't take from the community, it does give back. And I think a lot of, businesses, although they preach the corporation ethos, and they do the bare minimum to try and meet their obligations as a corporation, I'm rather hoping that Laing O'Rourke will think, actually, this is the way now to act as a corporation, and we understand what it means to give back to the local community in detail. So we're working really closely with Laing O'Rourke to try and finalise those KPIs. Obviously, that becomes part of the contract agreements, which we'll be working through over the next few months as well. But we see it as being a real benefit to both apprentices, upskilling, the supply chain. We'll be having Meet the Buyers events in the not too distant future, hopefully, where people can present their abilities to Laing O'Rourke, who can look to work with them over the course of the project. We'll also be extending that through to the Goodison Legacy project as well. Won't necessarily be with the likes of Laing O'Rourke, it could be with more localized developers, but again, the ethos is going to be there from day one, that we'll see through to the fruition of the People's Project.
Thanks, Colin. Now, Richard, you will obviously be mindful that, or we will be mindful that there are some commercial considerations to take account of when I ask this next question of you. So I'm sure you'll do your best to give us as honest, straightforward an answer as you can. But
wondering what's coming now.
It's an expensive project. It's £500 million, and projects, the costs of these stadia usually only go one way. I'm not convinced that Laing O'Rourke or anyone else are going to come onto the site and say, oh, actually, we've just found a way in which we can shave £100 million off the cost. And funding is an issue that, again, Evertonians will be mindful of. So give us, as I say, mindful of the commercial sensitivity. Yeah. Give us an update as much as you possibly can on that, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Frank. There are obviously commercial sensitivities around any detail, so can't really share any detail on that. But other than saying, obviously, the next stage in terms of finance will be when we get a positive planning decision. So we'll only really be able to move forward with the partners on that post planning. So there'll be more detailed updates when we get that positive planning decision. But obviously, stating the obvious, there's been a lot of investment to get us to this point in terms of financial investment that's run into many millions. Don't know whether Colin wants to share what that is to get us to this stage, but also all the resources in terms of what we've done to get to this point. Obviously, you'd have to expect us to be comfortable that we can fund the project, given all the work that we've done on it. So there'll be more material updates once we've got the planning decision.
Okay. Colin, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, no, and Rich is exactly right. We've committed over £39 million already on this project. I mean, that is a massive amount of money in a few years. We're also committed to a substantial expenditure over the next 3 months to further develop the plans. finalise designs. So that there shouldn't be any doubt that we're committed to getting this done. And as Richard said, funding is all subject to planning being approved. So, we have a plan in place to finalise that funding once we've been given the green light from the Secretary of State. It was interesting that you touched on projects overrunning on cost. One of the things that we've been really keen to do from day one, and Iain will understand this, particularly with the amount of work that's gone into the planning application. I always said to our board that you need to make sure you know what you're buying before you get into any formal contract with any contractors. We need to have a detailed design. We need to understand the risks that the site presents, because it is such an unusual site. It's got maritime engineering, it's got heritage issues. It's one of the windiest sites in the country. Notwithstanding all of those abnormals on that site, you want to make sure that you've got a contractor who knows how to build stadiums, has a local supply chain, and we can work with and partner with to make sure that we bring that project in on budget. And key to that was making sure that we had a stage 4 design that has gone into the planning application. Key to that was making sure that the type of contract that we entered into with Laing O'Rourke, which is a design and build lump sum contract, gave us a certain amount of protection against increasing costs. Laing O'Rourke have done a thorough job when they've been pricing and reconciling the value of the project in relationship to the risks that the project presents on that site. So, we've been really conscious of, let's make sure we know what we're buying. Let's make sure the board know what they're doing before they enter into anything of any substance. And let's make sure that everybody that we've engaged with understands what it is we want to deliver. And I think we've been really open, honest and transparent from day one with regards to that process.
Thanks, Colin. And let me just take a couple of questions from the chat room. Alan's put a very good one, actually, which potentially follows on from what we've just been talking about. So, Alan, whilst you're on the screen, you may as well ask that question yourself.
Just on mute. Also it was, guys. I was thinking is it's such a unique project. There's nothing like it else in the UK at the minute. How do you learn from other stadiums that have been built? What did Spurs learn? What went wrong? What went right? I'm sure the conversations have been had, but it was just a question to see how you would explore that really as a wider, one of the bigger challenges for the new Goodison or the Bramley-Moore.
Want me to take that one, guys?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that, as football clubs, we have relationships with other football clubs. We had the opportunity to visit Tottenham, which is probably the most, I suppose, pertinent and obvious one to pick on with regards to a project that overrun on time and budget, and look at the specific risks associated with their project that we could transpose and learn from. There are certain circumstances that present themselves to each individual project that they have to take on board at that moment in time. And we felt that one of the biggest issues was that Tottenham were not necessarily forced into a construction management type contract, but had to maintain their progress to build by entering into that type of contract. Well, we've seen that as being, I suppose, adversely risky, particularly on our site, recognising all the abnormals associated with it. So it was always one of our strategies to make sure we enter into a lump sum contract. That is fundamental to securing funding as well. There are, again, a number of other things that you could say we've learned from, with not just necessarily stadiums as well. But one of the things is I've had over 35 years worth of construction background. It's been related to football grounds ranging from Goodison Park Stand, in the 1990s, right the way through to Manchester City Stadium, probably the Manchester United Quadrants development, and then back to Goodison Park and working with Everton. And what I would say is, working in those sort of related industries and actually delivering projects all over the country, I'm looking at this one as, you know, as this is the one to be proud of. This is the one that is going to be, do you know what? I'll look at that job when I'm driving past with my grandkids, hopefully, and say, I built that, or I helped build that. And actually, I'm proud of what we built. This is about making sure that we do everything correctly. And that means learning from other people's mistakes, making sure we incorporate that within the design, making sure that we've de-risked the project as, you know, as best as possible, presented with the, you know, with the evidence that is there on the site, and doing the right thing from start to finish.
Do you know, just to add, and I've got a call on this this afternoon, believe it or not, that other stadia are now looking at Everton and the approach taken to learn lessons, because there might be existing stadia that are in the process of renewal. But what is very different to this one, I would say, is actually the sort of the regeneration story around it, and the fact that stadia are catalysts. Yes. Actually, so what does it mean for the surrounding hinterland? That we're getting so many questions on that right now.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Thanks, guys. A question in the chat room, moving slightly away from the football side of the business, but certainly, you know, one of the great opportunities that this new facility will give the club is income generation. And Richard, you mentioned the wider benefits as well to the visitor economy. Karen McPhee from Visit Britain is pointing out that the business events business is worth literally billions of pounds, 70 billion in 2019. And then I know that there are some plans to host concerts at the new stadium as well. So I don't know which one of you guys want to pick that up. Would that be you, Rich?
Yeah, I can pick some of that up for sure, and then obviously Ian, Colin, come in if you like. I think it does create an opportunity for the club, obviously, to increase commercial revenues. Stating the obvious, it's a bigger stadium, so we have more fans coming into it. While we will want to keep our ethos around affordable ticket pricing, it will give us an opportunity to have a bigger range of ticket prices, so that we'll be able to generate more yield on ticket prices in some categories. We'll have more hospitality. We'll have a fantastic location to deliver things like tours from. You know, the match day experience, you would expect, and obviously we've modelled this, look at spending more within the Stadium Bowl because the facilities will be better. And when I say Stadium Bowl, I just mean it's not bowl shaped. Like we've had this before with supporters. Whenever we mention the bowl, it isn't a bowl. It's just that's the industry expression. So there's lots of ways that we will generate more income on a match day, and obviously that's important to us as a club. But as the question was about non-match day, it also gives us a great opportunity there, and we will want the site to be used for community benefit, of course, but also there will be opportunities for increased hospitality, events on a non-match day, and I think, you know, it is fairly close to the city centre, and it is a fantastic position, you know, right on the waterfront. So we're sure that there will be additional revenue that we can generate as well on non-match day, whether it's small business events or larger events. And I know within the planning application as well, it was put in there for the opportunity to host large scale events like concerts as well. So all of those things are very important to us as a club, just to be able to satisfy the demand that we've got, because we do have a significant waiting list now. So to have more fans in the stadium obviously helps us financially, but also all of the other things that we can deliver to a point at Goodison now, but there is a limit on it. You know, we do have small events at Goodison. We do have some non-match day revenue at Goodison, but it's very, very limited and isn't really for various reasons. So yeah, all of those things are important to us, and I think important to Everton, yes, but also I think important to the city region, because again, it will be another top class venue of which there are already a number in the city, but this will be, I think, a very, very interesting part of the city's offer as well. So whether it's people, coming to the city and thinking, I'll spend a bit more time because I'll go and see the two football stadiums that hopefully we'll have there, one on the waterfront and that other one. But again, I mean, obviously I'm joking there, but Liverpool do generate a lot of money from that tourism opportunity that they've got, which we don't have quite in the same way at Goodison. So I think it's a big thing for Everton in terms of increasing our commercial opportunities, but also I think for the city itself and the city's proposition, I think it's powerful as well.
Okay, now let me just say, if anyone wants to ask a question, please do get it into the chat room quickly, because I'll be bringing the conversation to a close shortly. Ultimately, this is about making Everton Football Club more successful and meeting the ambitions of Mr. Moshiri and others, and obviously a fan base that has been starved of success for too long, I would say. And from a city's perspective as well, we see the economic benefits that European football, for example, from Liverpool bring in, and the fact that Liverpool has got an international brand as a football club, not just as a city, and Everton want to contribute to that by being successful in its own right. So just give me the timescales of what the new development looks like, when we're hoping to be at Bramley Moor Dock playing football games, and then perhaps only you can sort of answer this really, Richard. State what the ambitions of the directors are now, because I know it's very aspirational and they do want to aim right for the top.
Yeah. Well, if I answer part of that and then maybe ask Colin or Iain to come in just on terms of that, the process and the timescale. But I think the first thing to say is, this is an ambitious football club. I don't think we would be sitting here today talking about this if there wasn't real ambition to grow and push on. This is a stadium that we think will be iconic within the city region, but potentially, obviously, if it happens, it will be a statement for the football club globally. So I don't think anyone could say this wasn't, a statement of our ambition. And equally, you think about where we started this conversation of talking about, the good week or so for Everton. You look and we've got, a world-class manager who's absolutely in the A list of managers in world football, managing the team with some of the players. I mean, you mentioned there about the new contract for Luca Dean. All of these things, I think, indicate the ambition of the football club. So very ambitious owner, very ambitious board, and I think doing lots of things there that demonstrate that ambition. So I think, the manager has said that he wants us to be, qualifying for European place this year. And, which European competition that is, we'll obviously have to wait and see where we get to. But that is where we want to be for this season and the coming seasons. We want to be getting better and better. And all of these things do link together. The new stadium and the opportunities that will give us helps us, ultimately be more successful on the field as well. So I think, there is a lot of ambition around the football club on and off the field. And again, I think hopefully people can see that. But the stadium is a big part of that. And just going back to what I was saying earlier about those opportunities from a commercial perspective, obviously there are all the specific things that I talked about, but there is something as well about the brand that this creates around the football club. And again, these things can be a little bit intangible. But again, in terms of that statement, in terms of repositioning the football club, the new stadium would give us a huge opportunity to do that. Because I think, again, as a statement, it is obviously by definition modern because it's new, but it's dynamic as well. And I think equally for the city, the opportunities for the brand of Liverpool, because the global reach of the Premier League is absolutely vast and showing no signs of letting up. And every time that we have a game at our new stadium on the waterfront, those images will go right across the world, with Liverpool as the backdrop. So on all the already, stunning waterfront a little bit further up, we'll have these images being to a global audience. So I think, again, massive benefits to the football club, but huge benefits as well for the brand of the city, I think, internationally. So I don't know, Iain, whether you want to pick up on the process and the timescale, or Colin.
And I can pick that one up if you want, but just to, I suppose, reiterate Richard's information that just relayed to everybody there. We actually see this as being the 4th race in Liverpool. You've got the international cruise liner terminal with Liverpool City behind it. And, these people coming in from all over the world, the first thing they're going to see now on that waterfront of any substantial nature is going to be the new stadium. And, when you think about that as a global brand, an opening to a waterfront, it's just going to be fantastic for Liverpool. With regards to timings, I mean, obviously it's all subject to the Secretary of State giving us the green light, as we touched on. But we have a 3-year build programme. Now, obviously, a lot of that can only be instigated once we've received that planning application approval. We need to take due cognizance of when that arrives, because there is a certain amount of risks around the site, as I mentioned earlier on. And I suppose the initial one that we'll have to deal with will be the biodiversity and obviously the local nesting birds, the fish, the microbiological organisms within the dock, believe it or not, we need to be aware of. And there are certain timeframes that you can only deal with some of those issues, so we just need to bear them in mind. But once we actually start those works, including the dock infill, we're talking about 150 weeks worth of build programme. And I think we outlined there were 12 phases to that build programme as well. But initially, taking care of the ecological and the environmental issues is going to be the first thing that people will see happening on the dock. And then there's approximately 7 months worth of dock infill and maritime engineering. And I have to be honest, it is so interesting. Builder. It really is a technically challenging operation. And just the infill of the dock, there's over 500,000 cubic meters worth of material to be harvested from the river mouth. So it's just, really interesting. Some of the, I suppose, the plant and equipment that we'll be using to carry out these activities are such a massive scale. I'm really looking forward to seeing it start.
Yeah, I think we all are, Colin, that's for sure. Listen, just a couple of questions which are linked, actually. One from Jonathan Addy, who's well known certainly to Richard, and Jim Hancock. And they're asking about the naming rights and any thoughts around what the new stadium might be called. Might be too early for that, but
it probably is, Frank. Again, people will probably know that there is an option agreement in place with USM, who have the naming rights of our training ground currently. So, but other than that, again, this would be something for post planning.
Okay. Listen, guys, we're at the anointed hour. In fact, I've managed to finish a minute early, such as the expertise of my chairmanship, and I can only wish the club all the very best for the future. Obviously, we're keeping everything crossed in terms of the Secretary of State's decision. It is a hugely exciting development, not just for the club, but for the city as well. Thank you, Richard, Iain and Colin, for joining us and providing us with so much detail and information about that development. And thanks, obviously, to Project 4, our sponsors of the Liverpool Property Club. We will be getting the guys back to a live event, whether they like it or not, in the not too distant future, hopefully, and perhaps we'll be able to talk a little bit more about when the delivery will take place, because hopefully by then we will have that decision from the Secretary of State. And just before he goes, and so that he publicly commits to this, Richard has promised that we'll get the legend that is Trevor Stephen on a call with us in the not too distant future to talk with Richard about the great work that Everton in the community do. I wanted to talk a bit more about that today. Sadly, we've run out of time, but hopefully we'll be able to dedicate an hour to that conversation in the not too distant future. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks, Alan. See you all again very soon.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Come on, you Blues.
If you enjoyed that video, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel on the link below and be among the first to get to listen to all the latest interviews through the Downtown Den.